With assistive technology, or AT, let's talk about how we consider it. So on this page on Case Manager Resources, I'm jumping right to this handout because I think this will answer a lot of questions you might have, especially if you're unfamiliar with AT and maybe you find it scary and intimidating. Trust me, it's going to be okay. So this handout is how we consider assistive technology, which happens during the annual IEP meeting once a year, but it should really be happening across the whole school year. So we should always be asking ourselves across every area of functioning. So you see some here: seating, positioning, mobility, reading, math, writing, vision, hearing, behavior, accessing a computer, communicating with people. So all of our students function in all of these areas. They're typically developing in some of those areas and struggle and need support in other of those areas. So we should always be asking ourselves across all of those areas, is the student able to access general education curricula and life tasks independently? So in communication, when they're walking around the school, talking to teachers, talking with peers, that would be what access looks like. Are they able to do that independently and successfully? When it comes to reading, are they able to access their textbooks and their worksheets independently and successfully? And then are they making adequate progress, if applicable, toward their IEP goal? So which of these areas does the student have an IEP goal in? Is it behavior? Is it reading? Is it math? And are they making adequate progress toward that goal? So if the answer is no to either of those questions for any of these areas, so the student is not able to successfully and independently access in one or more of these areas, or they have a goal on their IEP in one or more of these areas, and they're not making adequate progress toward that goal. So if the answer is no to any of those questions, we should be considering AT and whether or not assistive technology could be part of the difference maker for that student. And what does that consideration look like? Well, there's this acronym SET. Again, maybe it sounds intimidating, but it's not. I'm not going to read through everything here, but SET means we're thinking through the student, so their characteristics, their needs, their strengths, their interests, the environment, so what classroom they're in, how many peers there are, the materials and the equipment that are in that environment, so the Chromebook that's in their classroom, iPads, the smartboard, textbooks, the specific task that they need to accomplish. So are they public speaking? Are they just talking with peers in class? What specifically do we need them to do? And then we get to tools. So thinking about the student, the environment, the tasks that they're working on, what tool is going to be a good match? And assistive technology has that word technology in it, but there are no tech tools, low tech tools, high tech tools. So high tech is maybe what you think of, with circuits and computers and iPads, but there's low tech things like that's an image of a switch button. A lot of students use those. They can accomplish multiple things. Some students use them for communication, for example. So we press a button and it communicates for us. Or no tech, like adapted seating is the image right there. So you might, as I walked through that student environment and task, that's the way we think about accommodations and modifications, for example. What are the characteristics of the student? What are their needs? What's their environment? What's the task they're working on? That's how we think about what accommodations or modifications they need. So it's nothing abstract or that you're unfamiliar with when we say SET. So we're thinking about that, but what does that actually look like? And where are these tools? And what happens before I can add this to the IEP, you might be thinking? Well, you're going to hear that phrase AT trial. Trialing AT is an easy, informal process. So in most cases, we're using data that we already have or that it is very easy to get. So we already have data on the student's IEP goal, for example. We also already have observation anecdotal reports. So by that, I mean the teacher who's working with the student or their paraprofessional or me, their case manager, maybe I'm teaching them for part of the day, we can just observe and speak to when the student is trying out this tool. How is it going? We could ask the student, like, do you like this? Is this working well? Maybe the student is trying out a text-to-speech program on their Chromebook or their laptop, and we just talk to them and say, how is this going? And we observe, and is it helping the student read? So we don't, it's an easy, informal process. So that's a little bit about consideration. And a little bit about AT trials. But let's talk about documentation now. So our go-to tools here. Documenting in the IEP. This document includes the templates that are in SpEd forms. So when I'm adding assistive technology to the IEP, there's a drop-down in SpEd forms, and I can click it, and there's templates which make my life a lot easier. They're in this Google Doc as well. Really, they're here to make them easier to browse. So if you ever need to refresh yourself before an IEP meeting, during an IEP meeting, about what options you have, how they're written up in an IEP, it's often easier to pull up this Google Doc on Case Manager Resources than to dig into a specific student's IEP in SpEd forms. So you can always do that. I skipped it, but how do we get those AT items? And on the SpEd website, let's just follow this link here, menu of AT tools. We can look at seating, positioning, mobility, communication, computer. Hopefully these categories sound familiar. They're the ones that we looked at before. They're the ones that are in the drop-downs in SpEd forms, so a lot of consistency. Here, you're gonna get descriptions again, but then photos of the devices used in real schools in the SpEd member districts, which is pretty cool. And also information on how you obtain tools for trial. So your school, your colleagues, fellow SpEd teachers in your department, your speech language pathologist, often have assistive technology tools that you could borrow and use and trial with a student. There's also specific things that all districts have access to, like Kurzweil is a text-to-speech program that all districts have access to and any student can use on their Chromebook just with their Google login. And then there's the SpEd Lending Library. And this is an actual, on my right here, is an image of the AT closet is what it's called. So by logging into the Lending Library, you can check out assistive technology items from the closet in order to try them out with a student. So that is pretty cool. So there's multiple ways you can browse and access AT tools to try. So say that you have gone through that process. You know, you've borrowed from a colleague, you've opened Kurzweil on a student's Chromebook, you've borrowed something from the Lending Library, and you're like, we have a good match here. It's working well for the student. It supports the student with their IEP goal or with their access, and I want to add it to the IEP. Finally, we're there. Okay, so in the IEP and SpEd forms, on services, page 2. I'm going to scroll down. Here's my assistive technology section. So I have to check one of these boxes, either no, yes, or more data needed, explain. So if backing up, let's say that just we need more data. We're sitting down at the IEP meeting and we have been trying out some things, but we haven't quite settled on it yet. So we would click more data needed. And then I would scroll down. Actually, there is a search box. So if you were not sure, but more data needed is at the bottom here. And I could choose something like this. So student is unable to accomplish tasks in all instructional areas. However, it's not clear what, if any, assistive technology might be needed. The district will continue trialing various AT devices to determine their effectiveness. So that might be true. But if we've tried things out and we're saying yes, so we might be sitting down at the annual IEP meeting and saying yes. We might be amending the IEP because, mid-year we tried something out, it worked, great. So let's add it to the IEP. but we're clicking yes. Again, I have these very helpful drop downs with these templates. So I'm going to look for reading here, just pretending that's the device that or that's the category where we've been trying my device. There we are. And I'm going to say text reader. Okay, during instructional activities that involve reading, students' teachers will provide student with access to a text reader, such as a screen reader or text-to-speech software. If that's accurate and true, nothing more to add, I'm going to leave it. You might be thinking, why don't we write in a specific brand name? We don't do that. We try never to mention a specific brand name, just describe the features, because the brand name might go, the device might need to change. Student might go to a different district and bring their IEP with them, and that district has something comparable, but it's not the same brand. So it's just better not to mention brand names. We try not to. And then I would click save. And that is as simple as it is. Now, there's one other thing I wanted to show you. One of the first headings here is AT in another document. And AT described in behavior support plan is the first example there. And that's a good example because point sheets are an example of assistive technology for the area of behavior. They're one of those tools. Again, you might not think of it because you're thinking of circuit boards and computers, but point sheet is AT. So we would write that up in the student's behavior support plan, but we still want to check this box yes. So just pointing that example out because quite a few of our students do have point sheets, and we would still check this box yes. So going back to our page, we've covered, again, how we consider and think about assistive technology. Again, all those areas of functioning, AT is something we should be considering. And we think it through with the student, the environment, the task, and then what tool is going to match the student environment and the task. Trialing is just such an easy, informal process. It's nothing to get intimidated by. Again, often the data that we need to know whether or not this is a good match and whether it's going to support the student is things that we already have, right? And one thing I didn't mention before is we don't need to do a PWN or get permission in writing before we're trialing an AT device. There's just one exception, and it's just a little bit of common sense. You know, if you're going to trial something really expensive or something placed on the body, like a weighted blanket or a compression vest, it's a good idea to talk to the family, the parents, about that ahead of time. And that's just, you know, common sense, and I think something you would do. And then once we found a good match, then we document it. And that is that for assistive technology. Thanks so much.